This week at Rock Run House, we enjoy the last of the summer garden as I harvest peppers and more. We take in the fall color, and I take you on a tour of our courtyard and surrounding outbuildings. So I hope you stick around and join us for this week at Rock Run House. Last week I took you on a tour of our porch, and this week I wanted to show off the courtyard to the house, which is just off the kitchen in the lowest level. The kitchen was built in what was the service area, really the workhorse part of the house, and it was built adjacent to this courtyard, which contains an icehouse, what we think is an old brew house, which you're looking at now with the big windows, and a garden area. The previous owners put in a really nice set of plantings. It was mostly shrubs and that sort of thing, but we have converted that to actual edibles in our kitchen garden, and that has been a lot of fun. Here's a close-up of the ice house, 2-story ice house, so you can imagine the scale at which food was produced at this farm. It was all filled with ice in here at one point, and then over here is the brew house. We have a lot going on in here now. You can see our stars from our Christmas installation last year that I'm just going to keep up for this year's installation. The big, huge windows for the brew house, and I don't know exactly how it worked, but I imagine people from the road coming down for a brew. Maybe it was even sold to them. This house was not a tavern, but we imagine the brew house might have been used for travelers along the road. Here's some herbs that I've been drying. And here are some old boards from the spring house, different iterations of wallpaper that I'd like to try to salvage somehow. So that's a project for probably multiple rainy days. Here's a view of, as I complain about, the burr cucumber, that huge vine that is growing all over the side of the courtyard wall. It is extended all the way across the lights. It's actually very cool looking, but I resent it because I thought it was an edible cucumber, and it's just simply not. So here's a shot of the beautiful stone steps going up, and the zinnia that survived the frost we had. You can see more of that cucumber vine that I do admit is a really great vine. Here's an example of some of the edible plants that we grew. The nasturtium, which also softened the stone wall. I had a whole line of them at one point. Here's a chamomile plant hanging on for dear life. We also grew tons of herbs in here, some tomatoes, all sorts of things. I can see some tulsi, basil back there that's still alive, oregano. My cabbage didn't do so well. And we also, of course, had things that were just beautiful to look at in this garden. Also part of the courtyard is the star of the show, really, the bread oven, a massive bread oven Paul spent all summer working on and restoring. And this is the current project, well, one of many current projects. This is the spring house. He did a lot of structural work. Look at those stone steps going up to the next level. And we are ready now for some really practical elements like plumbing and electricity, useful things to have. So we're excited about that. You can see down, as of now, without the walls, down into the spring below, which is oddly entertaining with the cliff walls. In this part of the spring house, we'll have a bathroom, and then we'll have an open room, a work room where I want to make tinctures and dry plants and really use that as a little laboratory for learning how to deal with medicinal plants. Before we move on, I want to give you a glimpse of the room below, which is the actual spring house where the water runs through. There's a hearth. I'm sure they must have used it as a summer kitchen, and probably a place to keep the milk cold, a sort of dairy or refrigerator is probably more accurate. So we're hoping to get that hearth, the fireplace working again, and that would be pretty amazing in combination with working with medicinals in the room above. One last aspect of the courtyard we wanted to show you was how water moves through it. Because the house is built into the side of a hill, it is an engineering marvel in terms of moving water down the hill without damaging the house. I've shopped at thrift stores my whole life and can't seem to break the habit. I just wanted to show you a few things I've picked up lately. I bought this book, Great Cooks and Their Recipes, and it goes back through several hundred years, and it's just really cool to see record of things that we don't necessarily make anymore or want to make. And so I often buy books like this. Look at that. I can't say that looks tasty. Maybe it does. Depends on your point of view. Also related to cooking, I got this really unique recipe card holder. It's set up like a bookshelf, and all the titles of the different recipes are, fish, poultry, desserts. They're all set up in these little books. And then you just pull the book out. Here's a little explanation card, an instruction card on how to use the Chef-Annette recipe file. I have a fondness for anything handmade, and when I see something at the thrift store, I have a really hard time passing it up. Here is a very unique object. It's a little door that you leave outside your door for people to leave notes in if you're not home. And Jesus watches over it. I'm not sure what the connection is between Jesus and note leaving, but there it is, a handmade object. Here's just a flower pot. Kind of has a lot of patina, and that's always worth picking up. And here's an old whisk, a nice enamel handle, still very useful. If the electricity goes out and you need to make an angel food cake, you're all set. You can just whip up some egg whites. And of course, ice skates. It's hard to pass up something like this. A reminder of a simpler time when skating was even more painful than it is in our current era. And, oh yes, I got this set of like mid-century dishware. It's dinerware, Syracuse, super heavy duty, but I just love the design on it. I'm not much of a mid-century person in general, but it looks Scandinavian and it's kind of a winner. And then I got this little chair. I always have to get a little chair when I see one. They're just kind of handy. And then I have the wagon. I didn't show that off, but I got this little wagon. And finally, here's my favorite find of the last few weeks, these brass candle holders from the 1980s, made in India. I think they're quite lovely. back to gardening. Well, this isn't so much gardening as it is foraging. This year I really need to try to collect walnuts. We have a ton of them, and I keep watching videos about how useful they are. We had our first frost the other night, and so I went out to the garden the next day to try to salvage what I could. It wasn't a super hard frost, so I was able to still get a lot of peppers. Here I am picking Tabasco peppers. I made some sauce, super hot, which is no surprise, but still I managed to be surprised by it. Also wanted to try to harvest potatoes, and I have never grown potatoes before. Honestly, it just does not seem worth it, but I am a little bit hooked. It's pretty exciting to pull potatoes out of your backyard. I also grew some dill this year, which I usually try to grow, but have never grown elephant dill of this proportion, so that was a win for me, it felt like. And here are some beans I grew. Let them dry on the pod. They're really tasty. I can't remember the variety, but the best part for me was that I grew them from seeds from my own beans last year, which is, sort of an obvious thing to do, but I've not really done it to the extent that I'd like to. Here's Ollie checking out honey nut squash, rejecting it. This one has a hole in it. I think he knows what he's doing. While I was filming, I kept hearing the crackle of a fire, so I looked up at the hillside and saw that Paul was doing some cleanup and made a nice fire up there, getting ready for an event we're having this coming weekend called Songs and Stories, where we tell fireside stories and have some live music. So I went to check the fire out, and I wasn't disappointed. It was pretty impressive up there against the cliffside. I was enjoying the fall colors, so I kept walking, and I walked up to our driveway, which is the old National Road, the original cross-country highway. In the 1950s, it was elevated and widened and moved to where the bread stand is now on the current public road, and our driveway is the old highway. So here's the bread stand. It's really fun to take photos of it in the fall. It just is so full of color. And I've had a great time making the garland that I showed in a previous video and just adding some elements to highlight the season. So that's it for this week. Thanks so much for watching, and I look forward to welcoming you back next week with another video from Rock Run House.